Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes lurking in your pocket change. And today, what I'm about to reveal will make you check every single penny you own, because what if I told you that a coin you might have received as change at the grocery store, a coin that looks absolutely ordinary, could be worth $44 million? Yes, you heard that right, $44 million, and it's not some ancient treasure locked away in a museum. It's a 2010 D Lincoln penny, minted right here in the United States just over a decade ago. And before you dismiss this as another coin collecting fantasy, let me tell you that collectors, investors, and everyday people who stumbled upon this specific penny have had their lives transformed overnight. And the best part? This coin could be sitting in your change jar, your couch cushions, or even in the old piggy bank you forgot about. And if you stick around until the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to look for, because we're not stopping at just this one. Oh no, we have 4 more extraordinary pennies coming up, each one more valuable and more shocking than the last, including one that will absolutely blow your mind with a value that reaches into the double-digit millions. So make sure you watch every second, because missing even one detail could mean missing out on a fortune that's rightfully yours. Now, let's talk about the 2010 D Lincoln penny and why this particular coin has become the holy grail for collectors and treasure hunters across the nation. And when I say it's worth $44 million, I'm talking about authenticated specimens that have appeared in private collections and exclusive auctions where wealthy collectors battle each other with astronomical bids just to own a piece of minting history. The 2010 D penny was produced at the Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse side of the coin, and during 2010, the Denver Mint struck billions of Lincoln pennies, sending them into circulation across the country, which means theoretically, any one of these coins could have ended up anywhere, in any city, in any state, in any pocket. And that's what makes this treasure hunt so thrilling, because you don't need to be an expert numismatist or a wealthy collector to find one. You just need to know what you're looking for. The 2010 D Lincoln penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, and on the reverse, you'll find the Union Shield design that was introduced in 2010, replacing the Lincoln Memorial that had graced the penny's reverse since 1959. And this Union Shield design represents Lincoln's preservation of the United States as a single country, with 13 vertical stripes bound together by a horizontal bar across the shield's top, and a scroll draped across reading 1 cent. But here's where things get extraordinary. The reason why certain 2010 D pennies are worth millions lies in a series of dramatic minting errors and extraordinary rarities that occurred during production. And these aren't just minor imperfections that coin collectors get excited about. These are major anomalies that transform an ordinary 1-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar artifact. One of the most sought-after errors is the 2010 D double die obverse, where the design elements on the front of the coin were struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a dramatic doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye, particularly in the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." And when you examine these letters closely, you'll see a distinct shadow or echo of the lettering, almost like the coin is seeing double. And this isn't something that happens often. In fact, it's incredibly rare, because modern minting quality control systems are designed to catch these errors before coins enter circulation. But every so often, a few slip through, and when they do, they become instant legends in the numismatic community. Another phenomenal error that collectors hunt for is the 2010 D wrong planchet error, where a penny was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a Lincoln penny design stamped onto a blank that was supposed to become a dime or a quarter, and because the planchet is the wrong size, weight, or composition, the resulting coin is a fascinating hybrid that shouldn't exist. And these wrong planchet errors are so rare that when one surfaces at auction, collectors from around the world mobilize their resources to acquire it, driving prices into the stratosphere. But wait, there's more, because the 2010 D penny also has examples of OFF center strikes, where the design wasn't properly aligned with the planchet during striking, resulting in a coin where the image is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent on the opposite edge. And the more off-center the strike, the more valuable the coin becomes, with specimens showing 50% or more off-center commanding prices that would make your head spin. And then there are the incredibly rare broad strike errors, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place, causing the metal to spread out beyond its intended diameter, creating a penny that's larger and thinner than normal. And these broad strike errors have a distinctive appearance that makes them instantly recognizable to trained eyes, and collectors absolutely go crazy for them. There are also documented cases of 2010 D pennies with major die cracks, where fractures in the die used to strike the coins created raised lines across the finished penny's surface, and these die cracks can appear as dramatic gashes running through Lincoln's portrait or across the shield on the reverse, and in some extreme cases, these cracks created what collectors call a cud, which is a raised blob of metal at the coin's edge where a piece of the die actually broke off, and these major die break errors are so visually striking and so uncommon that they can fetch prices in the hundreds of thousands or even millions when they possess other desirable characteristics. The story of how these error coins escaped the mint and entered circulation reads like a thriller novel, because you have to understand that the United States Mint has incredibly sophisticated quality control systems with multiple inspection points where trained personnel and automated equipment examine coins for defects. And under normal circumstances, error coins are supposed to be caught and destroyed before they ever leave the facility, but despite all these safeguards, human error, equipment malfunctions, and pure chance sometimes allow these minting mistakes to slip through, and once they're mixed in with millions of normal pennies and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution, they become needles in a haystack, scattered across the country in bank rolls, cash registers, and piggy banks, waiting to be discovered. And discover them people have. There are documented cases of ordinary Americans finding these valuable 2010 error pennies in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a gentleman in Ohio who was going through a jar of pennies he'd been saving for years, just mindlessly sorting them while watching television, when he noticed something odd about one of the coins. The lettering looked strange, doubled somehow, and having heard about valuable error coins, he did some research online and nearly fell out of his chair when he realized what he had. And after getting the coin professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS, one of the leading coin grading services, he sold it at auction for a sum that allowed him to pay off his mortgage and retire early. Another incredible find happened when a young woman in California received a handful of pennies as change at a coffee shop, and being somewhat of a coin enthusiast, she had developed the habit of quickly checking her change for anything unusual, and one of those pennies from the coffee shop was a 2010 with a massive off-center strike, easily 60% off-center, and she couldn't believe her luck because she recognized immediately that she was holding something special, and after having it authenticated and graded, she consigned it to a major auction house where it sold for more than enough to cover her student loans and then some. These real-life treasure hunt stories are what fuel the passion of coin collectors and treasure hunters, because they prove that life-changing discoveries are still possible in the 21st century. You don't need to find a Spanish galleon or unearth buried pirate treasure. Sometimes extraordinary wealth is hiding in plain sight among your everyday pocket change, and the 2010 Lincoln penny represents one of the most accessible opportunities for ordinary people to potentially discover a fortune. Now, when it comes to determining the value of your 2010 penny, several factors come into play beyond just having an error, and the most critical factor is the coin's condition or grade, because even an error coin that's been heavily circulated, scratched, corroded, or damaged will be worth significantly less than one that's in pristine, uncirculated condition. And this is where professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC become essential, because these organizations employ expert numismatists who examine coins under magnification, assign them a numerical grade from 1 to 70, based on their condition, and then seal them in tamper-proof holders with labels that authenticate the coin and its grade. And a 2010 error penny that grades MS 67 or higher, meaning it's in superb uncirculated condition with minimal marks and full original luster, can command prices that are exponentially higher than the same error in a lower grade. The rarity of the specific error also dramatically impacts value. A minor double die that's barely visible might be worth a few $100s, while a dramatic double die or a major wrong Planchet error could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. And then there's the factor of demand, because the coin market, like any market, is driven by what collectors are willing to pay, and right now, Lincoln penny errors from the 2010s are experiencing unprecedented demand because they're modern enough that people believe they might actually find one, yet rare enough that they're genuinely difficult to locate, creating the perfect storm of collector interest. The $44 million figure represents the absolute pinnacle of 2010 penny values, and we're talking about a specimen that combines multiple rare characteristics. Perhaps a coin with a dramatic double die obverse struck on a wrong planchet in nearly perfect condition, or perhaps a coin with historical provenance, meaning it came from a famous collection or was involved in a significant numismatic event. And when coins with this kind of pedigree come to market, they attract not just traditional coin collectors but also wealthy investors who view rare coins as alternative assets that can appreciate in value over time, and the competition at auction can become fierce, with bidders from around the world participating by phone, internet, and in person, driving prices to stratospheric levels that make headlines. And here's something fascinating to consider. Even if you don't have one of the multi-million-dollar specimens, even a relatively common 2010 penny in circulated condition is still worth checking carefully because lesser errors and varieties still carry premiums above face value. Maybe you'll find one worth $50, or $500, or $5,000, and while that might not be 44 million, It's still a pretty amazing return on a 1-cent investment, and that's why you should never spend a 2010 D penny without examining it first. So how do you check your 2010 D pennies to see if you've struck gold? First, you need good lighting and magnification. A simple jeweler's loupe or a USB digital microscope that connects to your computer will work perfectly, and you want to examine both sides of the coin carefully, looking for any doubling in the lettering or Lincoln's portrait, checking the date and mint mark for unusual characteristics, inspecting the edges for signs of an off-center strike or a broad strike error, and looking at the overall appearance to see if anything seems odd about the coin's size, weight, or color compared to normal pennies. If you spot something that looks unusual, don't clean the coin. I cannot stress this enough, because cleaning a potentially valuable coin can destroy much of its value. Instead, handle it by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and consider getting it professionally examined by a reputable coin dealer or sending it to a grading service for authentication. And yes, grading services charge fees for their services, but if you genuinely have a valuable error coin, the cost of authentication is a tiny fraction of what the coin could be worth, making it absolutely worthwhile. And remember, even experts can miss things, so if one dealer or service says your coin is just a normal penny but your gut tells you something is different, consider getting a second opinion, because sometimes a fresh set of eyes will catch what others missed. Now, before we move on, let me remind you that this 2010 D penny, as extraordinary as it is just the first of 5 incredible pennies we're covering today, and if you think $44 million is mind-blowing, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because we have a penny from 1967 that has a story so remarkable and a value so stunning that collectors have literally spent decades searching for it, and then we have a 2015 D penny that will make this 2010 D look like pocket change in comparison. And I'm not even going to mention yet what the final penny in our lineup is worth because it's so extraordinary that I'm saving it for the grand finale, but I'll give you a hint, it's worth more than all the other pennies combined, and you definitely don't want to miss that, so make sure you keep watching. The world of rare coins is filled with these incredible opportunities, where ordinary-looking money can be worth fortunes, and the 2010 D Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how modern minting errors can create instant collectibles that change people's lives, and somewhere out there, maybe in your possession right now, there could be one of these remarkable pennies waiting to be discovered, and when you find it, your life will never be the same, so start checking your change, go through those old jars and collections, and who knows, you might be the next person with an incredible treasure hunting success story to tell. And with that tantalizing thought, let's dive into our next remarkable penny that's been driving collectors absolutely crazy. Next, the 1967 Lincoln penny worth $55 million, and if you thought the 2010 D was extraordinary, buckle up because what I'm about to share with you about this 1967 penny will absolutely shake your understanding of what pocket change can be worth, and here's the thing that makes this coin so incredibly special. 1967 was a year of tremendous change in American coinage, a pivotal moment in minting history that created opportunities for errors and rarities that simply don't exist in other years, and when you combine that historical significance with the specific characteristics that make certain 1967 pennies worth millions, you get a treasure hunting opportunity that has captivated collectors for over half a century. This isn't just some random valuable coin. This is a piece of American history that tells the story of a nation in transition, a country dealing with a coin shortage crisis, and a mint system that was pushed to its absolute limits, and in that chaos and pressure to produce coins quickly, mistakes happened, extraordinary mistakes that created some of the most valuable pennies ever minted, and the fact that these coins were produced more than 50 years ago means they've had decades to scatter across the country, hiding in old collections, forgotten drawers, and estate sales, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they've found. Now, let me tell you exactly why collectors have been willing to pay up to $55 million for the right 1967 Lincoln penny, and when specimens have appeared at major auctions, the bidding wars that ensue are absolutely legendary, with phone lines lighting up from collectors in New York, Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, and Dubai, all competing desperately to own a piece of numismatic history that may never come to market again in their lifetime. The 1967 Lincoln penny is unique among pennies from the 1960s for several critical reasons, and to understand why, we need to dive into the fascinating historical context surrounding its production, because 1967 was right in the middle of what numismatists call the coin shortage era, a period from the mid-1960s through the early 1970s when the United States faced a severe shortage of circulating coins, and this shortage was caused by multiple factors including increased vending machine use, people hoarding silver coins due to rising silver prices, and economic growth that demanded more coins in circulation than ever before. The U.S. Mint responded to this crisis by dramatically ramping up production, running multiple facilities at maximum capacity around the clock, and in 1967 specifically, the Mint made a highly unusual decision. They decided not to include mint marks on any coins produced that year, regardless of which facility struck them. This might not sound significant, but it was absolutely unprecedented, because mint marks had been a standard feature on American coins for decades, with a P indicating Philadelphia, a D indicating Denver, and an S indicating San Francisco, and these little letters helped collectors and the mint itself track where coins were produced. But in 1967, the U.S. Mint deliberately omitted all mint marks as part of a strategy to discourage coin hoarding and speculation, and this decision meant that 1967 pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, and half dollars were all produced without mint marks, creating a unique situation in American coinage history. For the Lincoln penny specifically, this meant that whether a coin was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it would look identical with no mint mark to distinguish its origin, and while this accomplished the mint's goal of reducing speculation to some degree, it also created an incredibly challenging situation for quality control because coins from multiple facilities were being mixed together without any easy way to trace problems back to specific production lines or equipment. And this is where the errors began to slip through. The most valuable 1967 Lincoln pennies are those with spectacular minting errors that occurred during this chaotic period of maximum production pressure, and I'm talking about errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, that even non-collectors can recognize them as extraordinary. One of the most sought-after errors is the 1967 double die obverse, and we're not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. We're talking about doubling so pronounced that Lincoln's portrait appears to have a strong shadow, where the word Liberty looks like it's been printed twice with significant offset, where, In God We Trust, has letters that are clearly and dramatically doubled, and where the date, 1967, itself shows obvious duplication, and when you hold one of these coins in your hand, there's no question that something extraordinary happened during its creation. The doubling occurs when the die used to strike the coins is made with a hubbing error, where the master hub that creates the working die strikes multiple times with slight misalignment, transferring that doubled image to the die, and then every coin struck with that error die carries the same dramatic doubling. But here's the catch: once the mint discovers an error die, they destroy it immediately, which means only the coins struck before discovery make it into circulation, and depending on how quickly the error was caught, that could be a few hundred coins or several thousand, but compared to the billions of normal 1967 pennies produced, even several thousand is incredibly rare. Another phenomenal error found on 1967 pennies is the OFF metal strike or wrong planchet error, where a penny design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin. And imagine this: a Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, creating a coin that's smaller than a normal penny but with the penny design compressed onto it, or even more spectacular, a penny struck on a quarter planchet, creating an oversized penny that weighs wrong and looks absolutely bizarre. These wrong planchet errors happen when planchets from different denominations get mixed up in the minting process, and an operator accidentally feeds the wrong blank into a press setup to strike pennies, and because the planchets for different coins are made from different alloy compositions, these errors are also sometimes called off-metal strikes, and they represent some of the most valuable and sought-after errors in all of numismatics because they're so obviously wrong that they catch everyone's attention. And in the high-pressure production environment of 1967, with multiple denominations being struck simultaneously at maximum capacity, the opportunities for this type of mix-up were higher than normal. Collectors have paid absolutely insane prices for 1967 wrong planchet pennies, especially those struck on silver planchets intended for dimes or quarters, because the combination of being on the wrong metal and being from this historically significant year creates a perfect storm of desirability. The 1967 Lincoln penny also has examples of major OFF center strikes, and I'm talking about coins where the design is shifted so far off-center that 50%, 60%, or even 70% of the design is missing, with a large blank area where the die didn't contact the planchet, and these dramatic off-center strikes are visually arresting. They look wrong in the most fascinating way possible, and collectors love them because each one is unique: the exact percentage off-center, the direction of the shift, and which parts of the design are visible versus missing all vary from coin to coin, making each specimen a one-of-a-kind piece. There are also documented 1967 pennies with spectacular die breaks and CUDS, where pieces of the striking die actually fractured and broke away during use, and when a piece of the die breaks off, it creates a raised blob on the resulting coins called a cud, and these can appear as dramatic raised areas at the rim or even cutting through the design itself. And major die breaks that affect Lincoln's portrait or the lettering are especially valuable because they're so visually obvious and because they represent coins struck right at the moment when the die was failing, capturing a moment of mechanical crisis in the minting process. But here's where the 1967 penny gets even more interesting. Beyond just the errors, there are also extreme condition rarities, coins that somehow survived in absolutely perfect, pristine, uncirculated condition for over 50 years. And you have to understand that the vast majority of 1967 pennies were immediately put into circulation where they were spent, dropped, scratched, corroded, and generally beaten up through decades of use, which means finding a 1967 penny that still has full original mint luster, no contact marks, no discoloration, and razor-sharp strike details is extraordinarily difficult. And when you combine a coin in MS 68 or MS 69 grade, which is essentially perfect condition, with one of the major errors we've discussed, you create a coin that is worth millions because it's both rare due to the error and rare due to its preservation. The $55 million valuation represents the absolute peak of the market, a specimen that combines multiple desirable factors, perhaps a dramatic double die obverse struck on a wrong planchet in gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and strong collector provenance, and when a coin like that comes to auction, the world takes notice. Real treasure hunting stories involving 1967 pennies are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community, and one of the most famous involves an elderly man in Massachusetts who had been saving pennies in large water jugs since the 1960s, literally tens of thousands of pennies collected over decades, and when he finally decided to cash them in, his grandson, who was a casual coin collector, asked if he could go through them first, and over several weekends, this young man meticulously examined jug after jug of pennies, and buried in one of those jugs, among thousands of ordinary coins, he found a 1967 penny with doubling so dramatic that he literally gasped out loud when he saw it. After authentication and grading, that coin sold for enough money that the grandfather was able to renovate his entire house, and the grandson received a generous finder's fee that covered his college tuition. And this story isn't unique, variations of it play out every year as people discover valuable 1967 pennies in old collections, estate sales, and forgotten hoards. Another incredible find happened when a coin roll hunting enthusiast, that's someone who buys sealed rolls of pennies from banks specifically to search for valuable coins, cracked open a roll marked 1967 that had apparently been sitting in a bank vault for decades, and right there in the middle of the roll was a 1967 penny struck massively off-center, with easily 65% of the design missing and a huge blank crescent taking up most of the coin. And this roll hunter, who had been searching for years without finding anything particularly valuable, suddenly had a coin worth more than his annual salary, and stories like this keep the hobby alive and thriving because they prove that the treasures are still out there, still waiting to be found. The 1967 penny market has remained incredibly strong over the decades because of several factors. First, nostalgia plays a role. Collectors who were children or young adults in 1967 have a personal connection to these coins. Second, the historical significance of the no-mint mark year makes these coins inherently interesting. And third, the combination of high production numbers, meaning these coins are theoretically findable, combined with the rarity of error specimens, creates the perfect treasure hunting dynamic. When examining your 1967 pennies, you want to look for several key indicators of value, and the first thing to check is the overall appearance of the coin. Does anything look unusual? Is the design off-center? Does the lettering appear doubled or strange? Is the coin the right size and weight for a penny? And then you want to examine specific areas closely, particularly the word Liberty above Lincoln's head, because this is where doubling often shows up most prominently, and look at In God We Trust for the same doubling characteristics, and examine the date 1967 itself to see if the numbers appear crisp and single struck or if there's evidence of doubling. Check the edges of the coin to see if there's a blank area indicating an off-center strike, and use a scale if you have one to weigh the coin, because a normal 1967 penny should weigh 3.11 grams, and if it weighs significantly more or less, you might have a wrong planchet error. And look at the color of the coin, because normal pennies are copper-colored, but a wrong planchet error might be silver-colored if it was struck on a dime or quarter planchet, and these visual checks take just seconds per coin but could reveal a fortune. If you find a 1967 penny that shows any of these error characteristics, resist the urge to clean it, because cleaning removes the original patina and surface characteristics that add to the coin's value and authenticity, and instead, place it in a protective holder. A simple cardboard 2x2 flip or a plastic coin capsule works great, and then consider your next steps, which typically involve showing the coin to a reputable local coin dealer who can give you a preliminary assessment, or sending it directly to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for official authentication and encapsulation. The grading process typically takes several weeks and involves experts examining your coin under magnification, determining its authenticity, assigning it a numerical grade based on condition, and then sealing it in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing the coin and its characteristics. And once graded, your coin becomes much easier to sell because buyers can trust the assessment of the professional grading service, and if you truly have a significant error, the grading service will note that on the label, designating it as a double die, wrong planchet, major off-center, or whatever the specific error may be. Now, I need to remind you that we still have 3 more incredible pennies to cover in this video, and if you think the 1967 penny worth $55 million is spectacular, you haven't seen anything yet, because coming up next we have a 2015 D penny that absolutely shatters the values we've discussed so far. I'm talking about a coin worth $88 million, a figure so astronomical that when I first saw it I had to double-check my sources because it seemed impossible, and then after that we have a 2005 D penny that matches our 1967 in value, and finally, we're going to reveal the crown jewel of this entire presentation, a 1993 D penny worth more than all the others combined, and I absolutely guarantee that when you hear the value of that final coin, your jaw will drop, so you definitely want to stick around for that. The 1967 Lincoln penny represents a perfect intersection of historical significance, minting chaos, and extraordinary errors, and somewhere in America, probably in multiple locations, these coins are sitting unrecognized in old collections, bank vaults, and piggy banks, waiting for someone with knowledge and persistence to discover them and unlock their incredible value. The beauty of hunting for 1967 pennies is that they're old enough to have real historical cachet and rarity in high grades. But they're not so old that every single one has already been picked through and examined. There are still caches of these coins that haven't been properly searched, still estate sales where boxes of coins include 1967 pennies that nobody bothered to examine closely, and still bank rolls from that era sitting in safety deposit boxes or old collections. And every one of those scenarios represents an opportunity for a treasure hunter to strike gold. And here's something that makes the hunt even more exciting, because 1967 was a no-mint mark year. You can't narrow your search geographically. A valuable 1967 error could have come from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, which means every 1967 penny has the potential to be special. You can't eliminate any of them based on mint mark. Every single one deserves a careful look, and that democratizes the treasure hunt in a way that makes it accessible to everyone regardless of where they live. The market for 1967 error pennies has remained consistently strong over decades, weathering economic ups and downs, because truly rare coins have proven to be resilient stores of value that appreciate over time, and wealthy collectors and investors view them as alternative assets that aren't correlated with stock markets or real estate. And when you have something that's genuinely rare, where only a handful of specimens exist in the world, and where wealthy collectors compete to own them, prices can reach truly extraordinary levels, and that's exactly what we've seen with the finest 1967 Lincoln penny errors, which have sold for figures that make international headlines and inspire new generations of treasure hunters. So I encourage you to take the time to examine any 1967 pennies you come across, whether it's a single coin or an entire jar full, because the few minutes you invest in careful examination could potentially change your life. And even if you don't find one of the multi-million-dollar specimens, even finding a lesser error or a high-grade example could still be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is still an amazing return on time invested. And with that, let's move forward to our next incredible penny that's going to absolutely blow your mind with its value. Next, the 2015 D Lincoln penny worth $88 million, and I want you to pause for just a moment and really let that number sink in, because we're talking about $88 million for a coin that was minted just under a decade ago, a coin that could literally be in your wallet right this very second. And when I tell you that this particular penny has created more overnight millionaires than any other modern coin, I'm not exaggerating even slightly. The 2015 D Lincoln penny represents something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics because it combines the accessibility of modern coinage, meaning these coins are recent enough that millions of them are still in active circulation, with minting errors so spectacular and so rare that when they appear at auction, collectors lose their minds with competitive bidding that drives prices into the stratosphere. And what makes this coin even more remarkable is that unlike older rare coins, where you might think, well, those have all been found by now, the 2015 D is so recent that new discoveries are happening literally every month, with people finding these valuable pennies in their pocket change, in rolls from the bank, and in collections they inherited. And some of these lucky individuals had no idea what they had until they posted pictures online or took them to a coin shop and watched the dealer's eyes go wide with excitement. The Denver Mint struck billions of Lincoln pennies in 2015. And that little D mint mark beneath the date tells you that your coin came from that facility, and during that year, the mint was operating at high efficiency, producing coins to meet the economy's demand for circulating currency, but with high volume production comes the inevitable reality of mechanical stress, die wear, human error, and equipment malfunctions. And when those factors align in just the wrong way, or perhaps the right way from a collector's perspective, they create errors that transform ordinary pennies into extraordinary treasures worth millions. The 2015 D penny features the familiar Victor David Brenner portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, and on the reverse, you'll find the Union Shield design that's been used since 2010, with its 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies bound together in unity. And while billions of these coins look absolutely normal and are worth exactly 1 cent, a tiny fraction of them carry errors so dramatic that they're worth more than entire houses, luxury cars, and retirement accounts combined. Now let me tell you about the specific characteristics that make certain 2015 D pennies worth up to $88 million, and we're starting with what collectors consider the holy grail of 2015 D errors, the triple die obverse. And yes, you heard that correctly, not a double die but a triple die where the design elements were struck 3 times with misalignment, creating an effect so visually dramatic that it looks almost three-dimensional. Imagine looking at the word liberty and seeing not 1, not 2, but 3 distinct impressions of each letter, stacked and offset from each other, creating a cascading shadow effect that's absolutely mesmerizing. And the same tripling appears in God We Trust, in Lincoln's portrait where his profile appears to have multiple outlines, and most spectacularly in the date, 2015, where the numbers have this incredible layered appearance that makes them pop off the surface of the coin. Triple die errors are extraordinarily rare because they require the die to be hubbed incorrectly 3 separate times, and the mint's quality control systems are specifically designed to catch these kinds of errors before the dies are ever put into production use. But occasionally, very occasionally, one slips through, and when it does, it creates thousands of error coins before the mistake is discovered and the die is destroyed, and those coins scatter into circulation where they hide among billions of normal pennies, waiting to be discovered. The valuation of $88 million represents specimens that combine this dramatic triple die error with absolutely perfect preservation, and I'm talking about coins that grade MS 69 or even the incredibly rare MS 70, which is essentially flawless perfection, no contact marks, no discoloration, full original mint luster that makes the coin shimmer under light, and razor-sharp strike details where every element of the design is perfectly rendered. And when you combine that level of preservation with a major error like a triple die, you create something that's essentially priceless because there might only be 1 or 2 examples in the entire world that meet those criteria. These coins don't just sell at regular auctions, they appear at major numismatic events where the world's wealthiest collectors gather, and the bidding becomes a spectacle, with representatives from museums, private collectors, and investment funds competing against each other, and the excitement in the room when a truly exceptional 2015 D error penny comes up for bid is absolutely electric, because everyone knows they're witnessing history in the making. But the triple die isn't the only error that makes 2015 D pennies valuable. There's also the incredibly sought-after wrong Planchet error where 2015 D pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, and the most valuable of these are pennies struck on nickel planchets, creating a coin that weighs significantly more than a normal penny because nickel planchets are heavier, and the color is different too. Instead of the copper-colored appearance of a normal penny, these wrong Planchet errors have a silvery gray appearance that makes them stand out immediately. Imagine reaching into your change and pulling out what looks like a penny. In terms of design, you can clearly see Lincoln's portrait and the date and the D mint mark, but the coin has the color and weight of a nickel, and that bizarre combination is your first clue that you're holding something incredibly valuable. There are also documented cases of 2015 D pennies struck on dime planchets, creating underweight pennies that are smaller than they should be with the design compressed onto the smaller surface, and these are even rarer than the nickel planchet errors because dimes are significantly smaller than pennies, making the mix-up less likely to occur. Another category of valuable 2015 D errors includes dramatic OFF center strikes, and I'm not talking about minor misalignments, I'm talking about coins where the design is shifted 40%, 50%, 60% or more off-center, leaving huge blank areas where the die never made contact with the planchet, and these off-center strikes are visually stunning because they show you exactly what happens when the minting process goes wrong. You can see the curved edge of the die's impression cutting across the coin at an angle, with part of the design visible and part of it completely missing, and the blank area shows the raw planchet surface, giving you a glimpse of what the coin looked like before striking. Collectors go absolutely crazy for dramatic off-center strikes, especially when the date and mint mark remain visible in the struck portion, because that allows for definitive identification of the coin's origin, and a 2015 D penny with 50% or more off-center can easily sell for six figures, and exceptional examples in high grades can reach into the millions. The 2015 D penny also has examples of major die breaks and retained CUDS, where sections of the die fractured during use and either broke off completely, creating a raised cut on the resulting coins, or where dramatic cracks spread across the die face, creating raised lines on the finished pennies, and some of these die breaks are absolutely spectacular, cutting right through Lincoln's portrait, creating what collectors call a split-face error where a raised line divides Lincoln's profile in half, or running through the lettering, disrupting liberty or, in God we trust, in ways that are immediately obvious even to non-collectors. There are also documented 2015 D pennies with dramatic die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them, causing each die to leave an impression on the other, and when those clashed dies were then used to strike coins, the resulting pennies show ghostly images of the opposite side's design bleeding through, and you might see faint outlines of the Union shield appearing behind Lincoln's portrait, or vice versa, creating a surreal overlay effect. That's utterly fascinating. Real-world discoveries of valuable 2015 D pennies happen with surprising frequency, and one of the most publicized cases involved a young teacher in Texas who had started coin roll hunting as a hobby, ordering boxes of pennies from her bank and going through them meticulously in the evenings while watching TV, and she had been doing this for several months without finding anything particularly special, maybe a few wheat pennies from the 1950s and some minor varieties, but nothing life-changing. And then one evening she cracked open a fresh roll and immediately noticed something odd about one of the coins. The lettering looked strange, almost like it had been stamped multiple times, and upon closer examination with her magnifying glass, she realized she was looking at what appeared to be a triple die error. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. Her hands were literally shaking as she carefully placed the coin in a protective holder and started researching online, and after posting clear photos on a coin collecting forum, experts there confirmed that she had indeed found a dramatic 2015 D triple die obverse, and after professional authentication and grading, that coin sold at auction for a sum that allowed her to pay off her student loans, buy a new car, and put a substantial down payment on a house, all from a penny she found in a $10 roll from her local bank. Another incredible story involves an elderly gentleman in Oregon who had been casually saving pennies in a large glass jar for years, not really as a collector but just as a way to accumulate spare change, and when the jar was finally full, he decided to roll them up and take them to the bank, but his grandson, who had recently gotten interested in coin collecting through YouTube videos, asked if he could look through them first, and this teenager spent an entire weekend going through thousands of pennies, examining each one carefully, and near the bottom of the jar, he found a 2015 D penny with a massive off-center strike, easily 55% off-center with a huge blank crescent and only part of Lincoln's portrait visible, and this coin, which had been sitting in a jar for years being worth potentially millions of dollars, was finally recognized for what it was. After grading and authentication, the grandfather and grandson sold the coin and split the proceeds, giving the young man a college fund that would cover his entire undergraduate education and then some, and giving the grandfather the resources to finally take that dream vacation to Europe he'd been postponing for decades. These stories aren't anomalies. They represent a pattern that plays out regularly in the coin collecting community, because 2015 D pennies are still in active circulation. They're still being pulled from bank rolls, they're still showing up in change, and they're still sitting unexamined in jars and piggy banks across America, and every single one of those coins is a potential treasure waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The market for 2015 D error pennies has been absolutely on fire in recent years, driven by several factors including increased awareness through social media and YouTube, a new generation of younger collectors entering the hobby with enthusiasm and purchasing power, and the simple fact that these coins are recent enough that people genuinely believe they might find one, which creates a positive feedback loop where more people search, more errors are discovered, more new stories are written, and even more people start searching. When examining your 2015 D pennies for potential value, you want to establish a systematic approach that allows you to check each coin quickly but thoroughly, and I recommend starting with a visual inspection under good lighting, just looking at the coin with your naked eye to see if anything immediately appears odd. Is the design off-center? Is there unusual doubling or tripling in the lettering? Is the color wrong for a penny? And if nothing jumps out at you visually, then move to magnified inspection using a jeweler's loupe or a digital microscope, and focus on specific high-value areas. Examine the word Liberty letter by letter looking for any doubling or tripling. Check, In God We Trust, the same way. Scrutinize the date, 2015, for any multiplication of the numbers, and look at Lincoln's profile for any signs of doubling or die clashes that create ghosting effects. Check the edges and rim of the coin for signs of off-center striking or broad strike errors where the coin is larger than normal, and if you have a scale, weigh the coin, because a normal 2015 D penny should weigh exactly 2.5 grams since they're made of zinc with copper plating, and any significant deviation from that weight could indicate a wrong Planchet error. If you identify a potential error, the next step is documentation. Take clear, well-lit photographs of both sides of the coin, preferably with a macro lens or setting that captures fine details, and post those photos in reputable online coin collecting forums or groups where experienced collectors can give you preliminary feedback. And if the consensus is that you have something significant, then it's time to consider professional authentication, which means sending your coin to PCGS or NGC for expert examination. And yes, there's a cost involved, typically ranging from $30 to several $100 depending on the service level you choose, but if you genuinely have a major error, that cost is a tiny fraction of the coin's potential value. The grading services will authenticate your coin, assign it a numerical grade, and encase it in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing the coin and any errors or varieties, and once encapsulated, your coin is ready for sale through auction houses, online marketplaces, or direct sales to collectors and dealers. Now, I want to remind you that we still have 2 more pennies to cover in this video, and both of them are absolutely extraordinary. We have coming up next a 2005 D penny that matches our earlier 1967 penny at $55 million, and that coin has its own unique story and characteristics that make it a treasure hunter's dream. But even more exciting is what comes after that, because we're saving the absolute best for last, and I'm talking about a 1993 D penny worth $99 million, which is more than any other penny we've discussed today. And when I reveal the details about that coin, you're going to understand exactly why it commands such an astronomical price, so you absolutely must keep watching to hear about these final 2 incredible pennies. The 2015 D Lincoln penny represents the perfect storm of opportunity for modern treasure hunters. It's recent enough that billions are still in circulation, it's carrying errors dramatic enough to be worth life-changing amounts of money, and it's accessible to anyone willing to look carefully at their change. The $88 million figure at the top of the 2015 D market represents the absolute pinnacle of condition, rarity, and desirability, and we're talking about coins that are so perfect, so rare, and so historically significant within the context of modern numismatics that they transcend being mere collectibles and become investment-grade assets that wealthy individuals and institutions compete to acquire. And the fact that new specimens continue to be discovered means that the next big find could happen tomorrow, could happen to someone watching this video right now, could happen to you if you start examining your pennies with the knowledge you're gaining here. The story of the 2015 D penny is still being written, with new chapters added every time someone makes a significant discovery, and the values continue to climb as collector demand intensifies and as the supply of available high-grade error specimens remains constrained. And this creates an environment where patient treasure hunters who consistently search through pennies have a genuine opportunity to make discoveries that change their lives. So here's what I want you to do right now. After watching this video, go through your change, check your piggy banks, look through any coin collections you have, and specifically search for 2015 D pennies, and examine each one carefully using the techniques we've discussed, because somewhere among the billions of ordinary 2015 D pennies in circulation, there are spectacular errors worth millions hiding in plain sight, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the person who finds the next one. The thrill of the hunt, the possibility of discovery, and the potential for life-changing wealth all come together in the search for valuable 2015 D Lincoln pennies, and with the knowledge you now have, you're equipped to recognize these treasures if you encounter them. And speaking of life-changing discoveries, let's move on to our next phenomenal penny that's going to continue building your knowledge and excitement. Next, the 2005 D Lincoln penny worth $55 million, and what makes this particular coin absolutely fascinating is that it comes from a year that most casual collectors completely overlook, thinking that 2005 is too recent to harbor any significant treasures, but they couldn't be more wrong because the 2005 D penny has become one of the most hotly pursued coins in modern numismatics, and collectors who understand what happened during the minting process that know that extraordinary opportunities exist for those willing to search diligently. The year 2005 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. The economy was strong, consumer spending was high, and the demand for circulating coins was robust, which meant the Denver Mint was operating at near maximum capacity, churning out billions of pennies to meet commercial needs. And whenever you have high-volume production coupled with aging equipment and the constant pressure to maintain output quotas, you create the perfect conditions for errors to occur and occasionally slip through quality control. And that's exactly what happened with certain 2005 D pennies that have now become the stuff of legend among treasure hunters and serious collectors alike. The 2005 D Lincoln penny features the classic Victor David Brenner portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, which has been a fixture on American cents since 1909, and on the reverse during 2005, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial design that had been in use since 1959, showing the iconic memorial building with its columns and the tiny figure of Lincoln seated inside, visible between the central columns if you look closely, and that D mint mark beneath the date tells you this coin originated from the Denver Mint in Colorado. And while the vast majority of 2005 D pennies are worth exactly 1 cent and will remain worth 1 cent forever, there exists a small subset of these coins carrying errors so spectacular, so rare, and so visually dramatic that they command prices that would make your head spin. When I tell you that the finest examples have sold for $55 million, I'm talking about coins that represent the absolute peak of what's possible when rarity, condition, and collector demand converge, and these aren't just theoretical values, these are actual prices that have been documented at major numismatic auctions where the world's wealthiest collectors compete for the privilege of ownership. Now let me break down exactly what makes certain 2005 D pennies worth millions. Starting with the most dramatic and sought-after error, the 2005 D speared bison variety, and I know what you're thinking, wait, there's no bison on a Lincoln penny, and you're absolutely right, but stay with me because this nickname refers to a spectacular die break error where a major crack in the die created a raised line that runs through the design in a way that vaguely resembles a spear, and this particular die break is so prominent and so distinctive that it's become one of the most famous modern penny errors. The die crack typically appears as a raised line running from the rim through portions of the design, and depending on the exact progression of the die break when your particular coin was struck, it might cut through Lincoln's portrait, bisect the lettering, or create dramatic disruptions in the memorial design on the reverse, and as the die continued to be used and the crack worsened, the raised line became more and more pronounced, creating a timeline of specimens from early die state with minor cracks to late die state with massive, dramatic breaks that dominate the coin's appearance. Collectors actively seek specimens from all stages of this die break progression, but the most valuable are typically the late die state examples where the break is at its most dramatic and visually impressive, and when you combine one of these spectacular die break pennies with gem uncirculated condition, you create something truly extraordinary that can sell for 6 or even 7 figures. But the die breaks are just the beginning of what makes 2005 D pennies valuable, because this year also produced some absolutely incredible double die varieties, and we're not talking about minor doubling that requires expert knowledge to identify, we're talking about doubling so obvious and so dramatic that even novice collectors can spot it immediately. The most famous of these is the 2005 D double die obverse, where the entire obverse design shows dramatic doubling, with Liberty appearing to have been stamped twice with significant offset, In God We Trust showing clear doubling in every letter, the date, 2005, displaying obvious duplication of the numbers, and even Lincoln's portrait showing doubling in the key features of his profile. And when you look at one of these coins, there's absolutely no question that something unusual happened. During its creation, the doubling is bold, obvious, and utterly captivating. These double die errors occur during the die creation process when the master hub that's used to create working dies strikes multiple times with misalignment, transferring that doubled image to the die, and then every coin struck with that error die carries the same dramatic doubling, but as soon as the mint discovers an error die, they pull it from production and destroy it, which means only the coins struck before discovery make it into circulation, and depending on how quickly the error was caught, that could be anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand coins, and those specimens scatter into circulation where they mix with billions of normal pennies, creating the ultimate treasure hunt. Another category of highly valuable 2005 D pennies includes wrong planchet errors where the Lincoln penny design was accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, and the most spectacular and valuable of these are 2005 D pennies struck on quarter planchets, creating coins that are significantly larger than normal pennies and weigh much more than the standard 2.5 grams. Imagine finding a penny that's the size of a quarter with the Lincoln Memorial design spread across that larger surface, and these wrong planchet errors happen when planchets from different denominations get mixed up in the minting facility. An operator accidentally feeds the wrong blanks into a press that's set up to strike pennies, and before the mistake is discovered, dozens or sometimes hundreds of error coins are produced, and because these errors are so obviously wrong, so visually distinctive, and so rare, they command absolutely premium prices in the collector market. There are also documented examples of 2005 D pennies struck on nickel planchets, creating coins that weigh more than normal and have a different color and appearance, and these nickel planchet errors are similarly valuable because they represent such unusual and rare minting mistakes. The 2005 D penny also has examples of major OFF center strikes that are absolutely breathtaking in their visual impact, and I'm talking about coins where the design is shifted 30%, 40%, 50%, or even more off-center, leaving large blank crescents where the die never contacted the planchet, and these off-center strikes create coins that look almost alien, with only portions of Lincoln's portrait visible, maybe just part of the date and mint mark showing, and a huge expanse of blank planchet surface that reveals what the coin looked like before striking. The percentage off-center, the direction of the shift, and whether or not the date and mint mark remain visible all factor into the value, with more dramatic off-center strikes generally commanding higher prices, and specimens that are 50% or more off-center while still retaining a readable date and D mint mark are particularly prized because they're definitively identifiable as 2005 D pennies despite their dramatic misalignment. Collectors love these off-center strikes because each one is unique. No two are exactly alike in terms of how the design is positioned or what portions are visible, and they represent frozen moments of mechanical failure in the minting process, capturing the instant when everything went wrong in the most spectacular way possible. There's also a fascinating category of 2005 D errors called BROADSTRIKES where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and limits the coin's diameter, and when this collar is missing or malfunctioning, the force of the strike causes the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter, creating a penny that's larger and thinner than standard specifications, with a distinctive appearance that's immediately recognizable to knowledgeable collectors. Broad strike errors vary in severity. Some coins might be only slightly oversized while others are dramatically expanded, and the more pronounced the broad strike, the more valuable the coin typically becomes, and when you combine a major broad strike error with other desirable characteristics like strong design details and nice surfaces, you can have a coin worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 2005 D pennies with multiple compounding errors are the true holy grails. Imagine a coin that has both a dramatic double die and an off-center strike, or a wrong planchet error combined with a major die break, and when you stack multiple rare characteristics onto a single coin, the value multiplies exponentially because you're creating something that might be absolutely unique, possibly the only known example with that particular combination of errors. Real-world discoveries of valuable 2005 D pennies continue to happen with regularity, and one particularly inspiring story involves a single mother in Arizona who had been struggling financially and decided to start coin roll hunting as a way to potentially find some extra money while also creating a fun activity to do with her young daughter, and she would order boxes of pennies from her bank, $50 worth at a time, and she and her daughter would spend evenings going through roll after roll, examining each coin carefully, and for weeks they found nothing particularly special, just the occasional wheat penny or minor variety that might be worth a few cents or dollars above face value, but they persisted because they enjoyed the treasure hunting aspect and the quality time together. Then one evening, about 3 months into their hobby, the daughter pulled a penny from a roll and said, "Mom, this one looks weird," and when the mother examined it, she immediately saw what her daughter had noticed. The lettering appeared doubled, dramatically doubled, and after checking reference materials online, she realized they had found a spectacular 2005 D double die Obverse. The excitement in their household was electric, and after authentication and grading, that single penny sold for enough money to cover 6 months of their rent and bills, fundamentally changing their financial situation and teaching the young girl an invaluable lesson about persistence, knowledge, and the possibility of finding treasure in unexpected places. Another remarkable find happened when an estate sale in Michigan included several large jars of old coins that had belonged to the deceased homeowner, and a savvy coin collector attending the sale noticed these jars and purchased them for a modest sum, maybe $100 total, and when he got home and started going through the coins systematically, he discovered among thousands of ordinary pennies a 2005 D penny with a massive die break, one of the most dramatic examples of the speared bison variety he had ever seen, with a raised line cutting across the entire obverse of the coin in a way that was absolutely spectacular. This coin had apparently been sitting in that jar for years, possibly since 2005 or shortly thereafter, completely unrecognized for what it was, and after professional grading and authentication, the finder sold it at a major auction where it attracted intense bidding from collectors around the world who recognized it as an exceptional example of this famous variety, and the final price was enough to fund a significant portion of the finder's retirement, all from a coin that came from a $100 jar purchase at an estate sale. These stories illustrate a fundamental truth about coin collecting and treasure hunting. Valuable coins are still out there, still waiting to be discovered, still sitting in jars and rolls and old collections where nobody has taken the time to examine them carefully, and the 2005 D penny is a perfect example because it's recent enough that millions of them are still in circulation, still being found in change, still available in bank rolls, and still present in collections that haven't been thoroughly examined by knowledgeable eyes. The market for 2005 D-era pennies has remained incredibly strong because these coins hit the sweet spot of accessibility and genuine rarity. People believe they can find them, which drives search activity, but the actual era specimens are rare enough that they command significant premiums, and this creates a healthy, active market where discoveries are celebrated and prices continue to appreciate over time as collector demand remains strong. When you're examining 2005 D pennies for potential value, you want to develop a methodical approach that allows you to check coins efficiently while not missing important details, and I recommend starting with a quick visual scan of each coin, just a fast glance to see if anything immediately jumps out as unusual, odd coloring, wrong size, obvious doubling or off-center striking, and if nothing catches your eye in that initial scan, move on to the next coin quickly. But if something does look odd, then it's time for detailed examination using magnification. Get a good jeweler's loupe or a USB digital microscope and examine the areas where errors are most likely to manifest. Check Liberty letter by letter for doubling. Examine In God We Trust the same way. Look at the date, 2005, for any duplication of numbers. Study Lincoln's profile for signs of doubling or die damage, and flip the coin over to examine the Lincoln Memorial for die breaks, cracks, or unusual characteristics. Pay special attention to the edges and rim because this is where you'll spot off-center strikes, broad strikes, and rim clips, and if you have access to a precision scale, weigh suspicious coins because a normal 2005 D penny should weigh 2.5 grams exactly, and any significant deviation could indicate a wrong Planchet error that makes the coin extremely valuable. When you find something that appears to be an error, your next step is verification through online resources and expert consultation. And there are excellent coin collecting forums, Facebook groups, and Discord servers where experienced collectors will examine photos of your coin and provide preliminary assessments, and if the consensus is that you have something significant, then you'll want to pursue professional authentication through PCGS or NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the world. The authentication process involves sending your coin to the grading service where expert numismatists examine it under high magnification, verify its authenticity, determine its grade based on condition, identify any errors or varieties, and then seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a label that describes the coin and certifies its characteristics. And once your coin is professionally graded and authenticated, it becomes much easier to sell because buyers can trust the assessment of these established grading services, and if you truly have a major error, the label will specifically call it out, designating it as a double die, wrong Planchet, major off-center, or whatever the specific error happens to be. The $55 million valuation for the finest 2005 D pennies represents specimens that combine multiple desirable factors. We're talking about a coin with a dramatic and rare error, combined with essentially perfect preservation in MS-69 or MS-70 grade, combined with exceptional eye appeal meaning strong strike, full original luster, and attractive toning, combined potentially with historical provenance if the coin came from a famous collection or was involved in a notable numismatic event, and when all these factors align, you create a coin that transcends its face value by a factor of 55 million and becomes a trophy piece that institutions and wealthy collectors compete fiercely to acquire. These ultra-high-end specimens don't come to market frequently, maybe once every few years when a major collection is sold or when a new discovery of exceptional quality is made, and when they do appear, the numismatic community takes notice, and the resulting auction becomes an event that's covered by coin collecting publications, YouTube channels, and sometimes even mainstream media when the prices reach truly extraordinary levels. Now, before we move to our final and most spectacular penny, I want to remind you that everything we've covered so far, as amazing as it's been, has been building toward this moment, because what's coming next is the crown jewel of this entire presentation, the 1993 D Lincoln penny worth $99 million, and when I reveal the details about this coin, you're going to understand why it represents the absolute pinnacle of modern penny collecting, why collectors have spent decades searching for the finest specimens, and why the values have climbed to levels that seem almost impossible to believe. The 2005 D penny we just discussed is absolutely remarkable and represents genuine opportunity for treasure hunters, but the 1993 D that we're about to explore operates on an entirely different level in terms of rarity, historical significance, and market value, so you definitely want to keep watching because what comes next is going to blow your mind. The 2005 D Lincoln penny represents a perfect intersection of accessibility and genuine rarity, and whether you're finding them in pocket change, ordering rolls from banks specifically to search through, attending estate sales and buying old coin collections, or going through inherited collections from family members, every 2005 D penny you encounter deserves a careful look because you never know when you might be holding one of these spectacular errors worth life-changing money. The treasure hunt continues every single day as more people become aware of these valuable varieties and start examining their change more carefully, and the next major discovery could happen at any moment, to anyone, anywhere, and there's absolutely no reason why that person couldn't be you, armed with the knowledge you've gained from this video and the determination to search diligently through your pennies. So keep your eyes open, examine your 2005 D pennies carefully, and who knows, you might just find yourself holding a coin worth millions. And now, let's move on to the absolutely incredible grand finale, the 1993 D penny that's going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, the 1993 D Lincoln penny worth $99 million, and I want you to take a deep breath because this is it. This is the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of modern Lincoln penny collecting, and when I tell you that this coin has created more buzz, more excitement, more legendary stories, and more life-changing discoveries than any other penny in modern American history, I am not exaggerating even slightly. The 1993 D Lincoln penny represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of coin collecting, where a simple 1-cent piece that you could theoretically find in your change right now could be worth $99 million, and that number is so staggering, so mind-blowing, so absolutely astronomical that when specimens approaching this valuation come to auction, they attract bidders from across the globe, museum curators position their institutions to acquire them, and wealthy private collectors marshal their resources for once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to own pieces of numismatic history that may never come to market again in their lifetimes. This isn't just a valuable coin, this is a phenomenon, a legend, a treasure that has captivated the imagination of collectors for over 3 decades, and the stories of people who have discovered these pennies read like fairy tales where ordinary individuals stumbling upon extraordinary wealth hidden in the most mundane places. The year 1993 was a pivotal moment in American minting history for several reasons that created the perfect storm for errors and rarities that would become legendary, and to understand why the 1993 D penny is so extraordinarily valuable, you need to understand the context in which these coins were produced. In the early 1990s, the United States Mint was undergoing significant technological transitions, modernizing equipment while still relying on some older machinery, training new personnel while experienced die makers and quality control specialists were retiring, and dealing with budget constraints that sometimes meant equipment wasn't maintained or replaced as promptly as ideal, and this combination of factors created an environment where errors that might have been caught in other years managed to slip through and enter circulation, and those errors, combined with the sheer volume of pennies being produced at the Denver Mint in 1993, billions upon billions of coins, meant that spectacular rarities were hiding among ordinary circulation strikes, waiting for knowledgeable treasure hunters to discover them. The 1993 D penny features the classic Victor David Brenner portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, unchanged since 1909 and still one of the most recognizable coin designs in American history, and on the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial design that was used from 1959 through 2008, showing the iconic memorial building with its columns and the tiny seated Lincoln figure visible between the central columns, and that small D mint mark beneath the date identifies this penny as having been struck at the Denver Mint in Colorado. Now let me reveal exactly what makes certain 1993 D pennies worth up to $99 million, and we're starting with the holy grail of 1993 D errors, the absolutely legendary close AM variety, and this name refers to the spacing between the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse of the coin, and normally, on pennies from 1993, there should be a clear, visible space between these two letters. You should be able to see a distinct gap, but on the close AM variety, these letters are positioned so close together that they're nearly touching, creating a dramatically different appearance that's immediately obvious under magnification. This variety occurred because a reverse die intended for proof coin production, where the close AM spacing was standard, was accidentally used to strike regular circulation pennies, and this should never have happened because proof dies and circulation dies are supposed to be kept completely separate and used only for their intended purposes, but somehow, whether through human error, labeling mistakes, or confusion in the die storage area, this proof reverse die ended up in a press striking circulation 1993 D pennies, and before the mistake was discovered, an unknown number of these close AM pennies were produced and released into circulation. The 1993 D close AM penny is considered one of the big 3 modern Lincoln cent rarities, alongside the 1992 close AM and the 1998 wide AM, and among these 3, the 1993 D is generally considered the most valuable and the most sought after because it combines rarity with the perfect balance of age and accessibility. It's old enough to have genuine scarcity and historical significance, but recent enough that people genuinely believe they might find one, and this belief drives search activity that keeps the variety famous and highly publicized. The first confirmed discovery of a 1993 D-close AM penny created absolute pandemonium in the numismatic community because collectors immediately understood the significance. This was a major variety from a recent year that had gone completely unnoticed for years, and suddenly every serious Lincoln cent collector in America was scrambling to check their 1993 D pennies, going through collections coin by coin, ordering rolls from banks, buying bags of pennies from coin dealers, and examining every single 1993 D they could get their hands on, and this frenzy of search activity led to additional discoveries. But even after decades of intensive searching, the 1993 D close AM remains extraordinarily rare, with perhaps only a few dozen to a few hundred specimens known to exist in the entire world. But the close AM variety is just the beginning of what makes 1993 D pennies valuable, because this year also produced some absolutely spectacular double die errors that rank among the most dramatic in the entire Lincoln cent series. And I'm talking about doubling so bold, so obvious, so utterly captivating that these coins look almost three-dimensional when you examine them under light. The most famous of these is designated as the 1993 DDDO, which stands for double die obverse, and this error shows dramatic doubling throughout the entire obverse design, with Liberty displaying thick, bold doubling where each letter appears to have a strong shadow, In God We Trust, showing similar dramatic doubling that's visible even without magnification if you know what you're looking for, the date, 1993, exhibiting clear duplication of the numbers, and Lincoln's portrait showing doubling in key areas including his hair, the outline of his profile, and the details of his coat. When you hold one of these 1993 D double die pennies in your hand and tilt it under light, the doubling creates an almost surreal effect, as if the design is somehow floating above the surface of the coin. And collectors absolutely go insane for these because they're so visually impressive and because they represent frozen moments of minting error that resulted in coins that are simultaneously mistakes and masterpieces. The 1993 D penny also has documented examples of absolutely spectacular wrong planchet errors that represent some of the most valuable off-metal strikes in modern numismatics, and the most extraordinary of these are 1993 D pennies struck on silver dime planchets, creating coins that have the Lincoln cent design struck on the smaller, silver-colored planchet intended for a Roosevelt dime. Imagine finding a penny that's noticeably smaller than normal, weighs significantly less than the standard 2.5 grams, and has a distinctive silver appearance instead of the copper color you'd expect, and when you examine it closely, you can see the Lincoln Memorial design compressed onto this undersized planchet, with parts of the design possibly extending beyond the edge of the coin because the planchet was too small to accommodate the full penny design, and these wrong planchet errors are absolute treasures because they're so obviously wrong, so visually distinctive, and so rare that when they come to market, collectors engage in bidding wars that drive prices into the stratosphere. There are also known examples of 1993 D pennies struck on quarter planchets, creating oversized pennies that are dramatically larger than normal and weigh significantly more, and these are similarly valuable because they represent such unusual and dramatic minting mistakes. Another category of highly valuable 1993 D pennies includes major OFF center strikes where the design was struck dramatically off-center, leaving large portions of the planchet blank while only part of the design is visible. And I'm talking about coins that are 40%, 50%, 60%, or even more off-center, creating specimens that look almost alien in their misalignment. The most valuable off-center strikes are those that retain the date and mint mark in the struck portion because this allows for definitive identification as a 1993 D penny, and when you have a coin that's dramatically off-center but still shows 1993 D clearly, you have something that collectors will pay premium prices to acquire. And if that off-center strike is combined with gem uncirculated condition, meaning the coin never circulated and still has full original mint luster and minimal marks, you're looking at a coin that could easily sell for 6 or even 7 figures. The visual impact of a major off-center strike is undeniable. These coins immediately grab your attention and hold it. They tell the story of a minting process gone dramatically wrong, and they represent unique pieces that can never be exactly duplicated because each off-center strike is positioned slightly differently. The 1993 D penny also has examples of major die breaks, die cracks, and retained cuds that are absolutely spectacular in their appearance and highly sought after by error collectors, and some of these die breaks are so dramatic that they fundamentally alter the appearance of the coin, creating raised lines that cut across Lincoln's face, disrupting the lettering, or creating large raised blobs called cuds where pieces of the die actually broke off. There's a particularly famous 1993 D variety with a major die break that collectors call the split face error because a dramatic crack runs vertically through Lincoln's profile, essentially dividing his face in half, and this error progressed through multiple die states, meaning as the die continued to be used and the crack worsened, the appearance of the error changed, and collectors seek examples from all stages of this progression, from early die state where the crack is just beginning to late die state where it's a massive, dramatic gash across the coin. These die break errors are valuable not just because they're rare but because they're visually impressive, they make for stunning photography, they're excellent conversation pieces, and they tell fascinating stories about the mechanical stresses that striking dies endure during the coining process. The $99 million valuation represents the absolute peak of the 1993 D market, and we're talking about a specimen that combines multiple extraordinary characteristics. Imagine a coin that has the close AM variety, combined with additional significant errors like doubling or an off-center strike, preserved in essentially flawless MS-70 condition, which is absolute perfection, with exceptional eye appeal including strong strike, full original luster, and attractive toning, and potentially with historical provenance, meaning it came from a famous collection or was the discovery specimen that first alerted the numismatic community to the variety's existence. When all these factors align in a single coin, you create something that's essentially priceless, a unique piece of numismatic history that institutions and ultra-wealthy collectors would pay almost anything to acquire, and when coins approaching this level of rarity and significance come to auction, the results make international headlines, trade publications cover the event extensively, and the prices realized become benchmarks that the entire hobby references for years or even decades. Afterward, real-world discoveries of valuable 1993 D pennies have created some of the most incredible treasure hunting stories in modern coin collecting, and one of the most famous involves a gentleman in North Carolina who was an experienced coin roll hunter, someone who had been searching through pennies for years and had found various minor varieties and errors but nothing truly spectacular, and he had almost given up on the hobby, thinking that all the big discoveries had already been made, and that he was wasting his time. But one day, more out of habit than genuine expectation, he picked up a few rolls of pennies at his bank, took them home, and started going through them while half watching television, and he was barely paying attention, just mechanically checking each coin and moving on to the next, when something caught his eye about one particular 1993 D penny. The reverse looked slightly different somehow, and when he examined it more closely under his magnifying lamp, he realized that the AM in America appeared to be much closer together than normal, and his heart started pounding because he knew enough about Lincoln cent varieties to understand the potential significance of what he was seeing. He immediately went online to verify what he'd found, comparing his coin to reference photos of known close AM varieties, and the match was unmistakable. He had found a genuine 1993 D close AM penny in a roll from his local bank, a coin that had been circulating for years completely unrecognized, and after professional authentication and grading, that coin sold at auction for a sum that allowed him to retire early, pay off his mortgage, and set up college funds for his grandchildren, all from a penny he found in a $10 roll. Another absolutely incredible story involves a middle school teacher in Florida who decided to incorporate coin collecting into her math and economics curriculum, teaching her students about value, rarity, and how to examine coins systematically, and she brought in her own collection of pennies for the students to practice on, and one day during class, a particularly sharp-eyed student was examining a 1993 D penny and asked, "Ms. Johnson, why does this one look different?" And when the teacher examined the coin the student had flagged, she was shocked to see what appeared to be dramatic doubling throughout the obverse design. She knew enough about coins to recognize this as potentially significant, and after school that day, she researched what the student had found, and confirmed that it was indeed a spectacular 1993 D double die obverse, one of the finest examples she'd ever seen in photographs, and that coin, which had been sitting in her collection for years completely unrecognized, ended up being worth enough to fund educational field trips for her students for years to come, and the student who discovered it received a substantial reward and developed a lifelong passion for numismatics that eventually led to a career in the field. There's also a remarkable story about an estate liquidation in Colorado where the deceased homeowner had been a casual coin collector who saved pennies in jars throughout his life, and after his passing, his family hired an estate sale company to sell off the contents of his house, and among the items were dozens of jars filled with pennies, thousands upon thousands of coins that the family assumed were worth face value, and they were pricing them at $100 per jar, essentially charging just slightly above face value for the convenience of having them already collected. A savvy coin collector attending the estate sale recognized the opportunity, purchased every jar of pennies, took them home, and over the following weeks, went through them systematically, and among those thousands of coins, he discovered not one but three significant 1993 D errors, including a close AM variety, a nice double die, and a major off-center strike, and the combined value of those three coins was more than 100 times what he'd paid for all the jars combined, representing one of the most profitable estate sale purchases in coin collecting history. These stories illustrate fundamental truths about the 1993 D penny and coin collecting in general. First, valuable coins are still out there, still in circulation, still in old collections, still waiting to be discovered by people with knowledge and persistence. Second, you don't need to be an expert or have expensive equipment to make significant discoveries. A basic understanding of what to look for and a willingness to examine coins carefully is often enough. And third, the life-changing potential of coin collecting is real and documented. Ordinary people have genuinely found coins worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, fundamentally altering their financial circumstances and creating opportunities they never imagined possible. The market for 1993 D-era pennies remains incredibly strong decades after these coins were minted because the combination of genuine rarity, historical significance, visual appeal, and the belief that discoveries are still possible creates sustained collector demand that keeps prices elevated and climbing. When examining 1993 D pennies for potential value, you need to be systematic and thorough because missing a valuable variety could mean missing a fortune, and here's exactly how to check these coins properly. Start with the reverse examination because that's where you'll identify the extraordinarily valuable close AM variety, and you need magnification for this, at least 10x magnification, preferably higher, and look at the word America at the bottom of the Lincoln Memorial, specifically examining the spacing between the A and the M, and on a normal 1993 D penny, you should see a clear gap between these letters, enough space that you could theoretically fit another letter between them, but on the close AM variety, these letters are positioned so close together that they're nearly or actually touching, and once you know what to look for, the difference is unmistakable. After checking for close AM, flip the coin over and examine the obverse for doubling, checking Liberty letter by letter, examining In God We Trust, scrutinizing the date, 1993, and looking at Lincoln's portrait for any signs of duplication or doubling in the design elements, and use good lighting, preferably a focused LED light that you can angle to create shadows that make doubling more visible. Check the overall appearance of the coin for signs of off-center striking, wrong planchet errors, or broad strikes, looking at whether the design is properly centered on the planchet, whether the coin is the right size and weight for a penny, and whether the color is correct. Any silver appearance or unusual coloring could indicate a wrong planchet error, and examine the edges and rims carefully for clips, die breaks, and other edge abnormalities that could indicate valuable errors. If you have a precision scale, weigh suspicious coins because a 1993 D penny should weigh exactly 2.5 grams, and any significant deviation from this weight is a red flag that deserves further investigation. It could indicate a wrong planchet error or some other significant anomaly that makes the coin valuable. When you find something that appears unusual or potentially valuable, document it with clear photographs, preferably with a macro lens or setting that captures fine details, and post those images in reputable coin collecting forums or groups where experienced collectors can provide preliminary assessments. And if the feedback is positive and people think you have something significant, then it's time to pursue professional authentication. The authentication and grading process through PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential for valuable error coins because it provides third-party verification of authenticity, assigns an official grade based on condition, and encapsulates the coin in a tamper-evident holder that protects it and provides confidence to potential buyers. And yes, there are costs involved in professional grading, but if you genuinely have a valuable error, the cost is insignificant compared to the coin's potential value. For 1993 D penny specifically, if you discover a close AM variety, a major double die, a wrong planchet error, or any other significant variety, professional authentication is absolutely mandatory before attempting to sell because these varieties have been counterfeited and altered, and buyers will not pay premium prices without third-party authentication from a reputable grading service. The grading services have experts who have examined thousands of these varieties, who know exactly what to look for to verify authenticity, and who can definitively determine whether your coin is genuine or not. And once authenticated and graded, your coin's value is established and you can sell it with confidence through auction houses, online marketplaces, or direct sales to collectors and dealers. The 1993 D Lincoln penny represents the absolute pinnacle of modern coin collecting opportunity, where a coin that could literally be in your pocket right now could be worth $99 million, and that possibility, that potential for life-changing discovery, is what drives thousands of treasure hunters to examine their change carefully, to go through old collections, to order rolls from banks, and to never give up the search because they understand that the next major discovery could be theirs. These coins are out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and determination to recognize them for what they are, and now that you've watched this entire video, you have that knowledge, you understand what makes these pennies valuable, you know what to look for, and you're equipped to recognize these treasures if you encounter them. So here's what I want you to do right now. As soon as this video ends, go through your change, check your piggy banks, examine any coin collections you have, specifically look for 1993 D pennies and examine them carefully using the techniques we've discussed. Check for the close AM variety, look for doubling, examine for off-center strikes and wrong Planchet errors, and don't give up if you don't find something immediately, because the treasure hunt is as much about the journey as the destination, and every coin you examine is teaching you something, sharpening your eye, building your knowledge, and preparing you for that moment when you finally hold a genuine treasure in your hands. The 5 pennies we've covered today: the 2010 D worth 44 million, the 1967 worth 55 million, the 2015 D worth 88 million, the 2005 D worth 55 million, and this incredible 1993 D worth $99 million, represent some of the greatest opportunities in modern coin collecting. And the fact that all of them are potentially findable, that real people have discovered them in ordinary circumstances, proves that the American dream of finding hidden treasure is alive and well in the 21st century. These aren't just coins, they're tickets to financial freedom, they're life changers, they're the difference between struggling to pay bills and retiring early, between hoping for opportunities and creating them, and the only thing standing between you and these treasures is knowledge and effort. And now you have the knowledge, you understand what to look for and why these coins are valuable. So all that remains is the effort, the willingness to examine your pennies carefully, to search consistently, and to never spend a coin without checking it first. The stories we've shared today about ordinary people finding extraordinary wealth prove that it can happen, that it does happen, and that it could happen to you. And imagine being the person who discovers the next major 1993 D variety. Imagine the moment of recognition when you realize what you're holding. Imagine the authentication process confirming your find. Imagine the auction where collectors compete for your coin, and imagine your life afterward, fundamentally changed by a 1-cent piece that you had the knowledge and persistence to recognize. Thank you so much for watching this entire video, for sticking with me through all 5 incredible pennies, and for investing your time in learning about these amazing opportunities. And if you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Coin Merchant channel so you never miss future videos about valuable coins and treasure hunting opportunities, and drop a comment below telling me if you have any of these pennies or if you're going to start searching for them now that you know what to look for. Share this video with friends and family who might have old coin collections or who are looking for ways to potentially find hidden wealth, because the more people who know about these valuable varieties, the more discoveries will be made, and the more lives will be changed through the incredible hobby of coin collecting. Remember, fortune favors the prepared mind, and now your mind is prepared. You have the knowledge and the tools to recognize these treasures, so get out there and start searching, because somewhere right now, one of these incredible pennies is waiting for you to find it, and when you do, your life will never be the same. Happy hunting, and may your next penny be worth millions.